Hey everyone, it's a vlog. As is tradition, let's start off by acknowledging that vlog is the worst word that humankind has ever vomited up. It is aesthetically unpleasant, and there are a few things that you could append to it to make it worse. So let's squirt out this moist, turgid vlog. I went to PAX East 2.5 weeks ago, and spent some time in Blighttown where I was afflicted with toxic that I'm still getting over. So I spent weeks, several weeks out of commission being ill, hence why this video has been sitting on the counter getting cold for a couple weeks. But while I was there, it was an awesome time, it always is. I haven't yet had a PAX trip that's been an exception to that. 6 times in Boston, and I've never visited the aquarium before now. So I crossed that one off the list, and it was both cool and extremely underwhelming because its build is being the largest aquarium in New England, but it feels kind of small and cramped. Your expectations are primed for something that it just isn't. But it was a pleasant trip. You go in and you have like one wing that's just this large pond basically with manta rays and these small sharks swimming around freely, and you can stick your hand in the water and pet them as they swim by. So I can now officially claim that I got to pet a shark and a stingray, which is awesome. And then on the opposite side of that is the penguin habitat, which is huge, and it feels like the centerpiece of the whole aquarium. Outside are some sea lions, I think, and that's really it. But back inside, there are all these individual tanks lining the walls, full of all kinds of diverse sea creatures. It's really pretty. And one massive spire of a tank in the center with this spiral ramp leading up and around it. And there's all sorts of awesome looking eels and enormous tortoises in there. So that was nice. I took some really nice photos. It's the first time I've actually been to an aquarium in years, and it's certainly the first time since I got into photography, so it was a good chance to take some photos of things that I normally wouldn't get the chance to. And on Friday, I met up with Madness and PG from the community, and we just spent a bunch of time in the convention center late that night before we went up to the console free play area, and I got blown up in Mario Kart 8. I got blown up. The only other big it was a good time though. The only other big thing I did Friday was play in the Geico Hearthstone major tournament, which, man, this is the first time that I participated in a Hearthstone tournament. I was really, really disappointed. It was poorly run. I gotta say, it just nothing but issues. Like, people kept getting locked out of their accounts when they were signing up. Sign-ups were the day of the tournament, so it created a lot of congestion they couldn't handle, and they were getting backed up. It was running into the time the tournament was supposed to start. People were still busy registering. Things moved along really, really slowly. I got to my first match, and I think it was near the end of the day. And before the match started, the guy who was playing, let's see, he had his client crash twice, his computer crashed, his phone died, and his Battle.net authenticator, because they use two-factor authentication, was tied to his phone. So one of the tournament admins loaned him a charger so he could charge his phone up so that he could log into his account. So he had to wait for his phone to charge. Then he couldn't log into his account. He got locked out, so he had to get on his buddy's account and rebuild all of his fucking decks from scratch. It was so nuts. I could also hear the commentators through my headphones. The way they had it set up is it's like this really small square footage on the show floor, this little carpeted area. The play area, which is just like a long table full of laptops, actually. You have that, you have the projector screen right in front of that, and then behind that table, there's speakers and a bunch of chairs for the audience. and they're blasting the commentary through the speakers, so I could hear the commentators pretty clearly through the headphones. Like, the player is right next to the speakers aimed at the crowds. It didn't make a difference for my match since I wasn't on stream, but I'm pretty sure anyone who was on stream could have heard the casters just as easily. So that was not a great experience, with there being so many issues, so I just did not show up for my matches on Saturday, because I felt like a lot of my time got wasted on Friday. I mean, I still got to wander around the show floor a little bit because of how many delays there were. Like, my match did not start until late in the afternoon, but I was too nervous about missing my match starting. It just kept getting delayed and delayed. I didn't want to miss that, so I couldn't really wait in any of the longer lines. I couldn't wander really too far out because I would have to keep going back to check in to see, okay, is my match coming up yet? I still got to play some stuff on Friday, though, so I'll talk about that later, like what I played. We'll get to all that in like one big section. But on Saturday, I got to a couple of panels, including the Make a Strip one, which I always enjoy. It's Mike and Jerry of Penny Arcade doing a Q&A while Mike draws the comic live. And they screened this short fan film of The Lookouts, which turned out to be pretty good for what it was. After that, I went to PAX Mania, run by a League of Heels, which is a video game-based wrestling promotion where, you know, everyone has gimmicks and they're cutting promos and booking matches and stuff. But all of the matches are in wrestling games like No Mercy or 2K16 or whatever. And some of those gimmicks were really fun as well. Like, the heel commissioner of the league was a dude named Johnny Cashanova, and he has this gaudy blazer made out of $100 bills. And then they have Austin Walker, who's the champ, and he actually has a really legit looking belt. I can't recommend League of Heels enough. That was a really good time. Then I went to the Giant Bomb panel for the first time on a whim, even though I don't really follow Giant Bomb that much. But I know that things always pop off at their panels, like there's always something going down there. And they sometimes have like a PAX Mania or a League of Heels tie-in or something. Like, I think one year someone got put through a table on the stage. And you know what? I had fun. I laughed a lot during it. And they talked about Fast and the Furious, the entire series at length, and it made me very happy. Oh, you can hear I'm still getting over this cold. I'll go to another panel of theirs. Hell yeah, sure. And then Sunday was all about Acquisitions Incorporated, which I know I've praised in these before, but if you've never heard me talk about PAX or vlogged about it, it's a D&D game with the founders of Penny Arcade, again, Mike and Jerry, plus a few rotating, interns, and it's DM'd by Chris Perkins. This show, they had Morgan Webb and Chris Straub playing too. One of my highlights of this episode they did was that Chris Straub was there playing a warlock, and early in the campaign they're faced with this big mystery and they're trying to get a lead on it. So Chris Straub volunteers to cast Contact Other Plane, which is a spell that lets you ask up to, I think, 5 questions of an entity from another plane. But you have to succeed on a DC 15 intelligence saving throw, or your mind shatters and you go insane. So, early in this campaign, early in this session, his first roll of the whole game, he rolls a 1 and is insane for the rest of the game, and they are no closer to having any kind of an answer. It was great. It was one of my favorite Acquisition Incs too. That's like, Acquisitions Inc., seeing that live is like one of the highlights of the show for me. The other big attraction of Sunday is the finale to the Omegathon. It's kind of a tradition of mine that I always close PAX out by going to see that. And throughout PAX, they run this tournament for select attendees they pick ahead of time. And each round is a different game. So sometimes it's like round 1, you play Windjammers. Round 2, everybody plays Tower Falls, stuff like that. And the final round of the Omegathon is always a mystery game. And East has this theme. The final round of the Omegathon at East is always team-based. So this year it was Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, which, if you don't know what that is, it is an asynchronous VR bomb defusal game. One player wears the VR headset, and that's the player that can see the bomb and interact with it. The other person has an instruction manual, like an actual giant tome of a manual that, and they have to communicate to figure out the type of bomb they're working with so that they know how to defuse it. Like, there are modules all over this thing. There are wires to cut, buttons to press in sequence, all sorts of stuff. If you screw up 3 times, it blows up. If you take too long, it blows up. It's the best. It's the fucking best. I honestly think it's one of the best VR games out there. If you have a PSVR or a Vive or something, and someone to play it with, please do yourself a favor and get Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. So that made for just an awesome tense finale, which is a great high note to end PAX on. As for what I played on the floor throughout the weekend, aside from Hearthstone, this year was a little bit less AAA focused for me. I wanted to get around to Bethesda's booth to play Prey, but I never really found time for it. So I played a game called Kalina Legacy, which is a nifty little story-driven first-person horror game, and they built a small model house for everyone to play it in, which I thought was cool, but it kind of overshadowed how cool the game itself was. There was Dandara, which was alright. It has a gimmick that reminded me of VVV, where in V6 you don't have a jump, but instead you shift back and forth between standing on the floor or the ceiling. Dandara is kind of like that, except you have more directional control over where you end up, like you can move in diagonals and stuff. Might be worth putting some time into. I don't think it's the kind of game that lends itself particularly well to short convention floor demos, because it's a little hard to get used to quickly. There was a game there called Floor Kids, which is a mobile breakdancing game with a really nice hand-drawn art style, very fluid animations, and it's just simple and enjoyable because of how well the touch controls are actually implemented. I'm in love with the concept of Floor Kids, like this breakdancing game. I'm in love with that concept. I would like to see something maybe a little bit slightly wider in scope. One of the more interesting games I played on the floor was called The Town of Light, which I think actually came out in February, but it's been off my radar, and now it is emphatically on my radar. It's this horror game set in an actual Italian asylum from, I think, the 30s. And obviously I didn't get like a lot of time with it, but it seemed pretty disturbing and focused on telling a story about mental illness that I am really eager to get back into and see to its conclusion. What else? There was also Hunt Down, which was one of the first games that I checked out at the show. It's a 2D arcade shooter with local co-op, and just the local co-op alone makes it kind of a blast. It's set in this techno-punk future that feels like what 80s sci-fi tried to predict. You know, like everyone in like studded leather and chains and wearing big brightly colored mohawks. It's a setting that's rendered in gorgeous pixel art too, and I really dug that. And then right next to Hunt Down was something called Deep Rock Galactic. So I tried that out, not really a long line. It was an alright co-op shooter set in a mine, but something about the really flat-looking art style just threw me off. I wasn't super into it. And then at some point I hustled over to the Sony booth to play 3 things mainly. One was Crash Bandicoot, the remake. It is faithful, it's Crash, they had 1 level from each game, it's everything I could ask for. There was Rhyme that I really wanted to check out. It's that gorgeous looking cel-shaded puzzle exploration game that seems to keep getting delayed, but I think it's finally releasing in May. I liked it a lot, but again, I don't think it lends itself that well to that kind of a short convention center floor demo. I think it's time. It's a game that you really need time to sink into and sublimate in. And then the third thing that I really wanted to check out at Sony's booth was Nidhogg 2. which is one that I've been concerned about. I've been concerned about Nidhogg 2 ever since it got announced because it's fucking ugly, and it's so hideous that it's distracting. That, and it looked a little bit slower than Nidhogg. And Nidhogg is a game that I adore. So I wanted to see if this held up with a controller actually in my hands instead of just looking at this hideous art. And I can say safely that it does. Some of my concerns have been assuaged. It is in fact a little bit slower feeling. Both in, I feel like the animations, like the actual feel of the game, but also the pace is just a hair slower because of some of the new weapon types, which is not inherently bad. I will never stop hating the art style of Nidhogg 2, though. I can't stand it. But the stage art can be alright at times, and some of the new stage gimmicks are pretty fun. The new weapons, to get back to them, that you randomly spawn with changed the dynamic of the game up a lot, because the Claymore, let's see, the Claymore is slow. It's not good at poking like the fencing sword is, but it covers a lot of space directly in front of you, so it's hard to jump at. The bow is also really slow, but you can be lame with it somewhat. And the dagger, honestly, I had a hard time getting value out of the dagger, but I trust that there's some purpose to it that I just haven't been able to explore yet. And aside from that, like, mechanically, it's Nidhogg. It's just Nidhogg, but with a worse art style and an expanded scope. So I'm no longer worried that it won't play well, but man, I just hate the way it looks. Like, the aesthetic turns me off. It's something fierce. I stopped by the Distance booth. I didn't play it because I own it on Steam. It's been in early access for a long time. I talked to the devs for a while, and they confirmed that it's finally coming out this year, so hooray for creepy, atmospheric racing games. Hell yeah. And the last thing that I played that I want to talk about is Absolver. Oh boy, Absolver. It's a 3D martial arts game with this crazy flexible combo system that's constructed in a way that is very different from, but reminiscent to, God Hands. So all of your strikes are based on this freeform, custom create a combo system. And then the other pillars of it are parries and feints, so it's just right up my alley. Just for pure gameplay, this was my favorite thing that I played that weekend. And there's clearly a lot of depth to explore in it, and I think it comes out this year, so I am fucking eagerly awaiting that one. So that was the bulk of my PAX weekend. Thanks Madness and PG for hanging out on Friday, and thank you all for listening to me ramble and blog about PAX. Take it easy everyone, have a good one.